أعزائي الطلبة السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I hope you have good time. The present lecture, or the title of the present lecture, is Human Eye Response. In this lecture we will talking about the human eye receptors and some concepts which are important in evaluation of optical sources working in its visible region of electromagnetic spectrum. The human eye consists of two main types of receptors, which are rods and cones. What meaning of the rods? The rod cells are photoreceptor cells in the retina of human eye that can function in lower light than the other types of visual photoreceptors, cone cells. Rods are usually found concentrated at the outer edge of the retina and are used in peripheral vision. On average, there are approximately 92 million rod cells in the human retina. Rod cells are more sensitive than cone cells and are almost entirely responsible for night vision. However, rods have little role in color vision, which is main reasons why color are much less apparent in dim light. While the cones cone cells are photoreceptor cells in the retina of human eye. They respond differently to light different wavelengths and are thus responsible for color vision and function best in relative bright light, as opposite opposite to rod cells, which work better in dim light. Cone cells are densely packaged in fova centrals. Densely packaged cones which quickly reduce in number towards the periphery of the retina. There are about 6 to 7 million cones in human eye and are most concentrated towards the macula. Macula means oval spot near the center of retina. Cones are less sensitive to light than the rod cells in the retina, which supported vision at low light levels, means rods, but allow the perception of color. They are also able to perceive finer detail and more rapid changes in images because their response time to stimuli are faster than those of the rods. Cones are normally one of the three types, each with different pigment, namely S cones, M cones, and L cones. Each cone is therefore sensitive to visible wavelength or of light that corresponds to short, medium, and longer wavelength of light. Because of human usually have three kinds of cones which have different response curves and thus respond to variation in color in different ways, we have three chromatic vision. The rods are responsible for scotopic vision or rod vision. What meaning of scotopic vision or scotopic eye response or rod vision? Scotopic vision is the vision of eye under low light levels, as mentioned before. In the human eye, cone cells are non-functional in the low level of visible light. Scotopic vision is produced exclusively through rod cells, which are most sensitive to wavelength of around 498 nanometer green blue and are insensitive to wavelengths longer than about 640 nanometer orange. Reddish means red in shorter wavelength. Reddish orange. This condition is called the Purkinje effect. Purkinje effect. What meaning of the Purkinje? You should answer. Photopic vision is the vision of the. Now we transfer to Cohn's vision, which is mean photopic vision. Here, the Cohn's is responsible for the photopic vision. Photopic vision. The photopic vision is the vision of the eye under well-lit conditions. Luminance level 10 to power 8. 10 to 10 to power 8 candela per meter square means net. In human and many other animals, photopic vision allows color perception as mentioned before, mediated by Cohn cells, and significantly higher visual acuity and temporal resolution than available with scotopic vision. The human eye uses 3 types of cones to see light in 3 bands of color. The biological pigments of the cones have maximum absorption value of wavelength of about 20 nanometer blue, 554 nanometer blush green, and 564 nanometer yellowish green. Their sensitivity ranges overlap to provide vision through the visible spectrum. As mentioned, photovision occurs after adapted to field luminance greater than or equal to about 3 net of the cones or photovision occurs when occurs after the eye adapted to field luminance equal to or greater than about 3 net candela per meter square, which is called light adapted state, while the scotopic vision occurs after the eye adapted to field luminance less than or equal to 3 by 10 to minus 5 net. Thus, between these 2 regions, the eye response is continually. This region is called mesopic eye response. Mesopic eye response. Thus, this region means mesopic refers to a range of human vision with both rods and cones active. Means that in this region, mesopic eyes or mesopic region or mesopic vision, each of rod and cone association which each to other to make scene or to make eye response. There is no hard line transition at either end, but for most intents and purpose the mesopic range is generally considered to be from 3 net down to 0.01, or another source told us that to 3 by 5 to minus 10 to minus 5 net. This slide shows us or appear the regions of the human receptors this regions where the shining day, the cone will work for high level of radiation. And in darkness, where's the moon and stars, the rod will work. Function of rod is scotopic vision. Between these regions, rod and cones will associated to work, which is called mesopic vision. These curves like the pigment of cones, short, medium and long. From this curve we know that the work of rod or cones not depend on the wavelength, but depend on the level of radiation. Level of radiation only. Our slide show us the anatomy of the eye. This is retina in the eye. Any part of retina have or has a lot of numbers of receptors. Rod, which is gray, black and white, and cone cells, which is colors, green, blue, green, red. This fovea is the center of chromatic cones. Many of cones, or this position of many of cones, cones, fovea, and this blind spot. There's no receptors. The nerve of the eye, the aperture of the nerve of eye. Now come to the adaptation. This figure is a relation between the relative responsivity and time. Time in the dark, in dark minutes. Time in the dark. What meaning of this figure, or what we can understand from this figure? This figure show us the transfers. If we transfers from the light adapted state, cone vision, to dark adapted state, rod vision, how much time we need. If but before this, before talking about this figure, we will define the adaptation. Looking of adaptation in visual physiology, adaptation is ability of retina of the eye to adjust to various levels of light. Natural light vision or scotopic vision is the ability to see under low light conditions. In human, rod cells are exclusively responsible for night vision, as cone cells are only able to a function of higher illumination levels. Night vision is of lower quality than day vision because it is limited in resolution and colors cannot be screened. Only shadows or gray are seen. In order for a human to transition from day to night vision, they must undergo a dark adaptation period of up to hours. I will repeat. In order for human to transition from day to night vision, they must undergo a dark adaptation period of up to 2 hours, in which each eye adjusted from high to low luminance setting, increasing sensitivity hugely by many orders of magnitude. This adaptation period is different between rod and cone cells and result for the regeneration of pigments to increase retinal sensitivity. Light adaptation, in contrast, works very quickly within seconds. From this figure we understand that if we transfer from the light adapted state to dark adapted state, we need at least 30 to 45 minutes, while if we transfer from the light adapted state to from the dark adapted state to light adapted state, we need 3 to 5 minutes. Thus, adaptation is much faster under photopic vision. It can occur in 5 minutes for photopic vision, but it can take 30 or 45 minutes to transition from photopic to scotopic. Now we will transfer to some concepts which are important to evaluate the optical sources or light sources in visible region of electromagnetic spectrum. The first concepts are spectral luminous efficacy and spectral luminous efficiency. Spectral means according to or related to wavelength or frequency. Spectral means, as mentioned before, in radiometry and photometry. What meaning of spectral? Spectral means the function related to a specific wavelength or a specific frequency. What meaning of luminous efficacy and what meaning of luminous efficiency? Why we are need this concepts? Luminous efficacy is measure of how well a light source produces visible light. It is the ratio of luminous flux to power. What meaning of luminous flux? What meaning of luminous flux? Luminous flux or luminous power. Luminous flux or luminous power is the measure of the perceived. I will return. In photometry, luminous flux or luminous power is the measure of the perceived power of light. It differs from radiant flux, which is the measure of the total power of electromagnetic radiation, including infrared, ultraviolet, and visible light. In that, luminous flux is adjusted to reflect the varying sensitivity of the human eye to different wavelengths of light in visible regions. While the power in physics is the rate of doing work of the transferring heat, that's to say the amount of energy transfers or converted per unit time. In the international system of units, the unit of the power is the watt, equal to 1 joule per second. 1 joule per second. Now, we repeat again. It is the ratio, luminous efficacy. It is the ratio of the luminous flux to power, measured in lumens. What meaning of lumens? This unit. The lumens is the SI derived, international system, unit of luminous flux, a measure of total quantity. What meaning of lumens is a measure of the total quantity of visible light emitted by source per unit of time. Luminous flux differs from power, as mentioned in power means radiant flux. The luminous flux differs from power radiant flux is in that radiant flux includes all electromagnetic waves emitted, while luminous flux is weighted according to model of human eye sensitivity to various wavelengths. This right? Or this and do you understand what mean of luminous efficacy? Now we will continue in explanation of what meaning of luminous efficacy. We say that it is the ratio of the luminous flux to power measured by lumens per watts in the international system of units. Depending on context, the power can be either the radiant flux or the source output, or it can be the total power, electric power, chemical energy, or others consumed by the source, which sense of the terms of the intended must usually be inferred from the context and is sometimes unclear. The former sense is sometimes called the luminous efficacy of radiation, and the later luminous efficacy of source, or overall luminous efficacy. Not all wavelengths of light are equally visible or equally effective at stimulating human vision due to the spectral sensitivity of the human eye. Radiation in the infrared and ultraviolet parts of the spectrum is useless for illumination. The luminous efficacy of a source is the product of how well, look here, the luminous efficacy of source is the product of how well it converts energy to electromagnetic radiation and how well the emitted radiation is detected by the human eye. That's right. More explanation for human or spectral luminous efficacy. Wavelengths of light outside of the visible spectrum are not useful for illumination because they cannot be seen by the human eye. I will repeat again. Wavelengths of light outside of the visible spectrum are not useful for illumination because they cannot be seen by the human eye. Furthermore, the eye responds more to some wavelength of light than others, even within the visible spectrum. This response of the eye is represented by the luminosity function. Luminosity function, formerly name of the luminous efficacy or luminosity function. This is a standardized function which represents the response of the typical eye under bright condition, photopic vision. Again, this is standardized. What meaning of standardized? Standardized of what? Of the luminous efficacy. The luminous efficacy is a standardized function which represents the response of a typical eye under bright conditions, photopic vision. One can also define a similar curve for the dim condition in scotopic vision. When neither is specified, photopic conditions are generally assumed. The luminous efficacy of radiation measure the fraction. Measure what? Measure the fraction of electromagnetic power which is useful for lighting. It is obtained by dividing the luminous flux by the radiation flux. Luminous flux by the radiation flux or radiant flux. Luminous flux by radiant flux. Light with wavelengths outside of visible, as mentioned before, reduce luminous. Light with wavelengths outside the visible spectrum reduces luminous efficacy because it contributes to the radiant flux, while the luminous flux of such light is zero. Wavelengths near the peak of eye's response contribute more strongly than those near the aids. Before we transfer this slide, we return the spectral luminous efficacy and spectral luminous efficiency. You should know that some source will emit radiant power. This radiant power may be, or for example, 1 watt. If there is no visible wavelength in this output power, the luminous flux equal what? Equal zero. In this state, 1 lumen 1 watt equal to 0 lumen. 1 watt of output power of radiant flux, output radiant flux equal to 1 watt. How much or what magnitude of the radiant luminous flux? Luminous flux is 0. Thus 1 watt equal 0 lumen. But if the source was monochromatic source, the eye will be different in responsivity for each wavelength of this source. All wavelengths will be received from the eye, but the sensitivity of eye, the reception of the eye, will depend on the wavelength. The best function of the eye, or the best received of the eye, happen in a green invisible region, which is 555 nanometer. The maximum value of spectral efficacy function occurs at the wavelength of about 555 nanometer, and thus and has a value of 673, or some sources told us that the 683, not 73. Not important. 673 lumen per watt. In this source, the 1 watt of output power, radiant power, 1 watt equal to 673 lumen. Look, from 0 to 63, or 673 lumen, the range of efficacy of human efficacy. The range of human efficacy from 0, where is there no light, where is there no visible light in the radiant flux, to 673 lumen if the source of light, or the source of light is monochromatic and emit a monochromatic wavelength with 555 nanometers. If the best or the maximum value of a human efficacy is 673 lumen per watt. Lumen per watt. Thus, we can find or calculate the spectral luminous efficiency from this relation. The spectral as a function of wavelength, the spectral of human eye efficiency equal to a spectral efficacy for specific wavelength. For specific wavelength to maximum spectral human or spectral luminous efficiency equal to spectral luminous efficacy for any wavelength to a spectral luminous efficacy or maximum spectral luminous efficacy. We will repeat again this discussion or this explanation for scotopic vision. Only the difference between scotopic vision and photopic vision that the maximum spectral luminous efficacy occurs at the 510 nanometer in darkness or light adapted state. Happened the maximum efficacy or luminous efficacy in scotopic vision occurs at a wavelength of 510 nanometer. The maximum at 1725 lumen per watt, and some source or other source told us that 1700, not 2500 lumen per watt. Photopic luminous efficacy of radiation has maximum possible value. We will repeat again. Distinguish between scotopic and photopic vision. In photopic vision, the photopic luminous efficacy of radiation has a maximum possible value of 673 lumen per watt for the case of the monochromatic light at wavelength approximately of 555 nanometer green in region or in the spectrum region. While the scotopic luminous efficacy of radiation reaches a maximum of 1700 or 1725 lumen per watt for monochromatic light at wavelength of 510 nanometer, or some source told us that 510 nanometer or 500 nanometer. Of this figure represents the regions of human perception or sensitivity of human perception in visible spectrum. From this figure we see that photopic. This figure represents the human efficacy, luminous efficacy of human eye, luminous efficacy. This for photopic, and this for scotopics, and this for mesopic. Mesopic, the range between the scotopic and photopic, and each of rod and cones associated and work to make this region or in this region. This curve represents the luminous efficacy of scotopic and photopic vision. What main difference between them, scotopic and photopic vision, and why the photopic curve less than the scotopic curve, mean that the maximum efficacy or luminous efficacy in photopic vision is lower than luminous efficacy of scotopic vision. Why? It should be noted that the photometric measurements are based on spectral luminous efficacy and spectral luminous efficiency for photopic vision. The difference in peak value here, the difference in peak value between luminous efficacy for photopic vision and scotopic vision is not attributed to their responsivity difference, but is due to the fact that the standard candela radiates less energy in the blue-green regions where scotopic vision peak than the yellow-green region where the photopic vision peak. Moreover, scotopic vision covers a narrow region of the spectrum than the photopic vision. We know that the spectral luminous efficacy equal to the luminous flux to radiant flux. Luminous flux to radiant flux. A luminous flux or radiant flux in photopic vision more than radiant flux in scotopic vision. Thus, the value of the luminous efficacy in scotopic vision more than the it in the photopic vision. This curve represents the luminous efficiency versus the wavelength. Look, the luminous efficiency related to the luminous efficacy, which is luminous efficacy at the specific wavelength or for wavelength to the luminous efficacy or to the maximum luminous efficacy. In blackbody radiation, look this curve. With increased temperature of black body, the energy or emitted energy will be increased, and the peak shifted to the shorter wavelength. This means that it goes to reduces the luminous efficiency and thus efficiency if we exceed some levels of temperatures. Look, this is 500 nanometer. We expected in this region we will have the maximum efficacy and the maximum efficiency in this region between 500 and 600 nanometer, 555 for photopic vision and 510 for scotopic vision. More than this temperature. We expect that in 6 times the temperature. From this curve, we see that in the this is 7,000 Kelvin. This is 6500. In this region will we have the maximum spectral efficacy and maximum spectral efficiency of the blackbody radiation. And if we exceed this temperature, this concept's efficacy and efficiency will be reduced with increased temperature of black body. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can write these questions in classroom.